Welcome. We are drinking beer because we can, because we're adults and we're allowed to do these things.
Yep.
Even though a lot of people don't think so.
Yep.
Locke, I think you should start first because I want to know what beer you have.
Yes. So I am, as you may be aware, up in the northerly sort of Muskoka area, with mid Ontario, I guess is what that would really be. It's north of Toronto, though, and I am this evening drinking something that I tried for the first time earlier this afternoon, and it is called Hillary Goes to the Moon. What it is described as a New Zealand Pilsner. Now, Shane, as you may be aware, my mother's name was Hillary.
Yes.
And she was an Australian, or more to the point, a Fiji-born Australian. So, a New Zealand beer named Hillary. Geez, I guess I better give it a try, find out. Actually, it's great. It's very much like what I would describe a Czech Pilsner would deliver, which is to say that it's crisp. It's got that sort of slightly acerbic, but sort of aromatic and sort of green, sort of hoppy characteristic. And so I've had it on tap as recently as earlier this evening, and so now I'm going to have it from the tin, and let's see how it goes.
Where did you have it on tap? Wow!
This has got some effervescence to it. This is a Sawdust City product.
So basically, so you were at Sawdust City earlier.
I was at Sawdust City earlier. We'll be also back at Sawdust City tomorrow in the afternoon because they're having their 12th anniversary party, something like that.
Oh wow, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So you're going to have, say, like what is the event going to be like? Are they going to make? Have they made something that's like?
Well, they have
or something.
They have two bands playing. I think that's sort of 1 and 2 o'clock respectively. And then there's going to be, I imagine, the usual stuff that goes on there, which is to say that there's going to be food. There's going to be probably a lot of people with their dogs.
Excellent.
It's basically, the building used to be, and this should give you an idea of the space. The building used to be the Canadian Tire for Gravenhurst. So what it is very spacious. It's a full functioning brewery with a tap room rather than a bar. Except that because it's got so much space and the seating's sort of social, but again, there's lots of room. It's also a great venue for music. And then on top of that, they've got a whole other section because it's a huge building because it's the former Canadian Tire. So they've got a whole other side, which is an event space where they have like weddings and whatever, right?
Cool.
So it's they're in terms of a full sort of range of things that you can do with the model of being a craft brewer. The only thing, and I was joking about this earlier this evening with one of the regulars, Sue, who's I don't know. Sue is maybe. It's not polite to say how old the girl is, but she's considerably my senior. She'd be about my parents' age, kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah. And we were joking, like, what they should do is have rooms upstairs so that if you get pass out drunk, you got somewhere to go.
Well, you gotta have your priorities.
Well, look, hey, if anybody wants to get serious about drink driving, funding that, subsidizing it, as a government expense. Is that maybe not such a bad idea?
I don't think it's a bad idea. I mean,
I think it's a good idea.
in Victoria, actually, you know what? Before we continue, so this beer is crisp. It's really tasty. You're enjoying it a lot. The beer that we have is different.
Okay.
All right, so we have had from Phillips before their Blue Buck. Their Blue Buck is like probably one of the more popular beers in their lineup, sold across the country, I think, at this point.
Mm-hmm.
This was a limited release that came out not too long ago, strangely enough, in a bomber bottle. It is their Blue Buck, but barrel aged.
Oh, that is that one proud looking buck there. Put the picture up closer to the camera there.
I don't want it to drip onto the computer, but
Fair enough. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Nice.
Well, let's open this thing up. I'm very curious. This after I'm quite happy about this one. Rocking in at about 89% alcohol by volume.
6% actually.
All right.
So this is about the same alcohol as an extra old stock used to be.
Was extra old stock 6%?
Yeah, that's why I used to drink it.
Oh, really? I had no idea. That's a very colorful beer. So it's got a very ambery kind of color to it.
Now, let's see if there's information about what kind of barrels. It's got rich whiskey character, resting in barrels from our in-house distillery.
This is not bad.
Hold on.
This does not have that usual barrel aged function that's fun.
The distillery, are they saying that these were aged in barrels used by their distillery?
Yes,
All in-house.
all in-house.
Wow. Okay.
That's actually kind of surprising.
And actually, Driftwood has their own distillery in-house now too.
Wow. I wonder if that's the industry seeing the writing on the wall for, as we've all talked about before, about how the
Let's call that
for beer seem to have hit the ceiling kind of thing.
let's call that the craft horizon.
The craft horizon. Okay, yes.
That's where things are going. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. So I was reading an article yesterday that said, although alcohol sales are plummeting, beer sales for the first time this year have surpassed wine sales.
Really? That kind of surprises me because wine is sort of that common, it's how often when you're invited out for a dinner party, with people, do you bring a bottle of beer? You wouldn't do that. You bring a bottle of wine generally. Yeah.
Possibly the case that millennials don't drink wine with dinner. It makes them even more out to be Philistines, doesn't it?
Damn millennials. They can bite our butts.
Let me be honest about something here.
Nobody that I would hang out would be like that because they're all Italian and so they appreciate wine. But
right.
Good Lord. Yeah, you'd think that wine. I mean, now that said, in Ontario, the level of private public partnership involved with the wine industry here, I think, as with BC, is not just moderate, it pushes towards high, like almost to a degree that if it weren't for the fact that you got to feel sorry for Canadians trying to grow wine, you would think that other nations would say that that's protectionist. What you're doing is industrially unfair. But like realistically, you gotta have a Canadian wine industry, don't you? And that's the question. I mean, could this be one of those things that, I mean, dear Lord, the idea, oh, maybe it'll be like the Victorians. You know what? I've always thought they're a bit like the Victorians, the millennials. Like some a period of prudishness where nobody drinks wine, and then it'll come back because Gen Z, I think already kind of maybe more like us than they are like the boomers or the millennials. So that's my take on it, but we'll see.
So you're saying potentially the millennials are not consuming alcohol as much as previous generations, or even, well, actually, what is the gen entering adulthood right now, like 20 years of age kind of thing? Is that, what are they called? Alpha?
I think it's Generation Alpha.
Yeah, so
apparently and I had this discussion with my youngest, who's 17. He just graduated.
Okay.
And he seems to believe that he is Generation Z.
Really?
Yeah. I think, well, yeah, I mean, look, I don't know exactly who marks this stuff out. The idea is, if it's statistically,
I imagine that there's some wise guy who lives on top of a mountain with a big long beard, and he does all that.
There's this generation that needs naming.
If it's going to be statistically useful, you got to assume that what we're talking about is a cohort, so a bunch of people born within a particular period of time. Now,
right,
finds a cohort. I mean, you could just do it bars by age, but that doesn't reveal as much as it would when you figure out, well, look here, when we see it do a sort of a lump, that's a grouping, and so we're going to label the grouping, right? And I think that's what demographers try to do when they're naming these things. I don't know that for sure. That's a best case scenario, and I could be wrong. But if that's what they're doing, then presumably you get certain lumps or or gaps, I guess, as it were. I often believe that I fell into the generation gap. I don't know about you, but we got to see. We got to see behind the curtain at an age where it was inappropriate. You know what I mean? Like we could see that the line between where things went from analog to digital. We could see, the gap of mental nothingness between where everybody's trying to wear the tightest pants they could to where everybody's trying to wear the baggiest pants they could.
That's true. I mean,
I
was reading not too long ago about how the Generation X is a very odd grouping of people, because we are not, because our parents and their parents, the boomers' parents, lived a hell of a lot longer than previous generations by something like 11 years or something, due to the advent of penicillin. I think it was actually one of the major contributors in 1951 or 2. I remember it was introduced during the Korean War, and it was actually talked about in MASH, I think, as well. I think there was an episode about talking about penicillin. Anyway, so our parents are living longer, their parents are living longer, and that generational trickle-down effect of wealth didn't happen for us, for the most part, because our parents are generally still alive for the most part. So, so a lot of that stuff plays into millennials, which my sister, I think, is a millennial technically, if you group it the way.
What year was your sister born?
81.
I think she'd still be Gen X.
Is she still Gen X?
I think she's Gen X.
What's the cutoff?
I think it's 1984 or 85.
Okay. I could agree with that. But I don't know. It's very odd. Apparently, we're a strange generation because the article, by the way, wasn't really about Gen X. It was about how Gen X is getting screwed. But it's actually the millennials. But what's Gen Z? where this bulk of, because the article was talking about the wealth gap and blah 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 and all that kind of stuff, but it also talked about how children tend to inherit from their parents and this sort of thing, but it's going to be Gen Z that gets the bulk of that wealth because we'll get too old and we might be dead before our parents are able to actually have that trickle down, because men tend to live shorter lives than women, so our mothers in theory would live a heck of a lot longer, and we will get skipped over. Not all of us, but a bunch of us will get skipped over because we will just either be not alive or we won't care. I don't know, something to that effect. And there was some stuff about a lot of boomers changed their wills to favor the grandchildren. Apparently, that was news to me. I don't know how true that is, but apparently we're just every which way you turn, Gen X gets fucked constantly. So I don't know. I mean, I don't feel like I'm getting fucked.
I would like to be fucked.
That ain't happening. Well, drink a bit more of this, and you might get lucky.
You might forget about it and not care.
Yeah, exactly. We'll just eventually burn out and fade away.
Here's a piece of Gen Xia that uncomfortable in these times. I mean, we grew up at a time when Sid Vicious was really sexy and on TV all the time, right? Including with the Nazi shirt and all of that, right? Like, think about where we are right now and how the current generation would respond if that were what you put them in. If you could send them back in time through a Doctor Who episode and make them relive what we lived, can you imagine? Like, I mean, oh dear.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that we went through that today's generations would not be able to handle.
Yeah, I mean, like
media, in everything.
Yeah.
What if Mount St. Helens happened today?
Well, that's a good question.
Like, was it May 18th, 1980? And I remembered, I was young. I was 7-ish.
It was a Saturday morning.
Yeah.
I was watching Scooby-Doo, and my parents were still asleep. And remember, the house started shaking. It was like you could hear the boom, like boom, boom, and the house was shaking each time. My dad got up, and he was kind of in a panic, and he was like, "What the fuck is that?" And then he decided it was like a 21 gun salute down at the harbor or something, and then he went back to bed. And of course, there was no internet back then, so we didn't find out until the evening news that it was Mount St. Helens.
But what if that happened today? Like, would it be okay? Let's, as Sean pointed out, it could have been. We have two other mountains very close. As Baker specifically comes to mind. If that erupted, do you think people would? I don't feel like people really panicked like they would panic today, back in 1980. So, do you think that people would freak out more? Would they freak out less because we have access to like things like the internet? People would know what was going on.
I think people would panic. I think they would freak out more, and I think it's because of the internet. This information gets spread way too quickly. People who either think that they know what they're talking about and spewing their garbage, or actually don't know what they're talking about, know that they don't know what they're talking about, but are going to say it anyway to get views and all that kind of stuff. They're going to weaponize the situation to try to create a panic, to create clout for themselves. And that's what happens these days.
oh my god, the thing.
I love what's going on right now. So rad. I love it. Awesome. That was good. I don't know what that was, but that was amazing. Yes, that was very satisfying, whatever the hell that was. But
This is what I mean, right? Like that would become, because I remember the footage that we would see back in 1980 on the news was pretty. I mean, they were pretty calm. Would be a way to describe it. I guess. I mean, I don't recall people being nervous or.
But I mean, let's keep in mind that we were like 7.
Yeah, Sean makes a good point here. That's true about the people that would not move at all in that sort of, because there was some people that didn't move because
There was one guy in particular.
yeah
He had a cabin. He knew it was going to blow, and he basically said, "I've lived here my entire life. If I'm going to die, if I'm to die, then I'm going to die here."
yeah.
okay.
But he also didn't really believe it was going to blow.
Well, just the other day, the news was somewhat a buzz about the research that had been done on the plates offshore, and how the subduction zone where we are, or close to us anyway, off Vancouver Island, is smoother than the southern fractured part of the plate down sort of along the south part of sort of Oregon and California.
Then that means what?
That apparently shit's going to get real when it happens.
Oh,
So it's going to be worse than California. California, for example, just had a 4-point whatever, last Monday or something, under Pasadena, I think, and it sort of made people really nervous and broke stuff. But
having these little quakes, like a lot of little quakes, is a good thing. That helps relieve the pressure and buys us more time before the big one hits.
So are we hoping that as Gen Xers that we're dead long before that happens? If you live here, of course, on the West Coast.
Yeah, I don't know. Or we can just move.
Have you ever looked at sort of have you ever looked at
Boobs?
sort of the sort of the Pacific Northwest, let's say, and wondered if you're looking at geometry that makes the most sense if you're looking at it in terms of this is an impact effect. Has that ever occurred to you before? Is this am I bringing up something new, or is this something you've thought of?
You're bringing something up new, or maybe I'm not understanding because I have
Like, so you look at Vancouver Island.
Yeah.
You look at I mean, and there's a lot of islands that are sort of understood. This does happen generally with sedimentary rock, but you look at the sort of the sedimentary structure of the Juan de Fuca and like all those islands, right? And then you look at sort of where they're sort of sticking up, like they've evidently. I mean, it could be a slow effect of just plate tectonics, but looking at the region generally, and with the understanding that when this might have happened, there could have been considerable glaciation over the whole area.
Right. Okay.
Could that have been a meteor impact? Like sort of
West Coast?
Between Vancouver and Seattle, I guess, is sort of what I'm suggesting. Or sort of maybe Victoria and Seattle, if you see what I mean.
I mean, I suppose it's not out of
I think if that was even a possibility, I think it would be.
Thing is, know that didn't occur to you until I brought it up. So that was sort of the answer to my question. Is did that occur to you before? But no, if that never occurred to you,
Gary.
but I feel like it sort of looks a bit that way, you know?
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, yeah. I remember my dad used to tell me that Vancouver Island was like on a stem, and in an earthquake, the stem would break, and the island would just sink into the ocean. Obviously, that's not the case. I was going to say something, and now I don't remember what it was.
Okay. What about what's the weather like actually where you are? I gather you're both in Victoria right now.
Yes, it is. Actually, it was overcast for most of the day, and then the sun showed up in the afternoon, which was actually quite nice.
What was the temperature?
About
20-ish. Yeah, I can't complain.
degrees Celsius for our American viewers.
Hey, actually, yeah, I haven't seen any viewers here from the States today, but I suspect that they are out there.
Well, what was the weather like in your neck of the woods there?
Well, I started the day in Toronto where it was, I think, sort of in the 26 at least, maybe 27 in the neighborhood. Now that I'm up here further north, it seems a little cooler. I could find out for sure. Hold on, let's see what it say. Oh dear, yeah, we're right down at 20 degrees.
Well, I have to say I am not complaining because it is one of those things where I'm kind of done with summer weather. Having gone through places that are like 41 degrees and that kind of junk.
Yeah. So okay, so your trip
I'm not anxious for winter to start.
No, neither am I.
So
I don't want the opposite.
So your trip back across the West, I gotta ask, how much smoke and what was that like?
A lot. It was okay. Okay, so I took the Southern Highway. I took the Lily is now going to join the show. So basically, what happened was I went south of the Crow's Nest Highway because it was not that smoky at all. There were no forest fires really around. There were, some that were way off in the scrub, but it turned out that when I hit Osoyoos and came out of left Osoyoos and continued east, that's when the smoke really hit. And I was actually just looking at the smoke stuff today for Environment Canada, and like all the way back to the very beginning of time, it felt like that's what was that was a problem because I think it was the worst is apparently in Western Ontario, where the weather warning specifically from smoke from the fires is going to cause a lot of issues respiratorily wise.
Yeah.
Go see Alan. But I mean, overall, the trip was great. The smoke was, noticeable, but it didn't bother me too much. But it's the state of the world now, where you can't have a summer without burning half of your timber. And I mean, I guess there's an argument to be made that maybe it should be burning because it needs to replenish itself. They are forests, and they do have a natural cycle of forest fires and things. So maybe we've been too good at stopping the forest fires, and we've built up a lot of stuff that naturally would have probably burned anyway. So I don't know. Not that I wanted to, but I'm just saying that.
Yeah, no. I totally get it. Yeah. No. That is part of the cycle. There's some types of pine cone that only open under forest fire conditions. It's part of the cycle.
I agree. I mean, we need those people to naturally start the fires by flicking their cigarette butts into the bush.
Yeah, and then there's that. Yeah, I mean, the human encroachment problem is like, you know, we could talk all about it, but God, what the fuck for? Like, I'm at it at this point where it's sort of like, if there's no solution, there's no problem. So there you are.
True. Very, very true. But overall, I think that I don't know. We were talking about the generation differences, and it got me thinking about how spoiled we are. Are we spoiled? Are we a spoiled generation, or is it the one after us?
I think we have a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B, but that's just me. I don't look. Here's the thing: it's really tough to talk for a whole generation. That's a big aggregate of people.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
Are some of them spoiled? Absolutely. Am I one of them? Oh, definitely. Are they all spoiled? I don't know about that. You know. And what, you know, ultimately, it's not where you've been that ultimately you can do anything about. So casting blame is always sort of, it's just punishment, you know. I don't know that you get a lot of justice in it.
No, that's true.
Yeah, I mean, oh, you know, if the baby boomers had been less born into a world created by the Second World War, and
you know, I have to say, I haven't seen this much animosity between generations as we do now.
No,
I think we, you know, the generational gaps were always just something that were just acknowledged, that these people were born in these years and these other people were born in these other years, but there wasn't like this comparison, you know, like saying you screwed us over kind of thing until recently, the last few years.
I think.
Let's have a word about backwards compatibility.
All right. Are you saying that
we all understand that within the game of industry in the 20th century, it got to a point where it was planned obsolescence became a thing. We're building the thing because we know that we're going to replace it down the line because it's more profitable for us to do that than it is for it to work for 50 years. That's why the washing machine over there that's from you know, the early 2000s is still running. And if I bought one tomorrow, it would fail in 3 years.
Yep, that is true.
Yeah, I mean that we all already understand. Now that we've gone software, backwards compatibility is something that people have shrugged off because we're just trying to progress as fast as we can. And there's always a better way. There's always a new future, and and you got to be up to the minute. It's a fast game, and we're making it better and better and better. But the problem is, if after a point you're just moving the interface around, so the GUI gets tumbled every you know, quartermester or whatever it is. The problem is that all you're doing is spinning attention span on the triviality of trying to figure out how to make a digital thing do what you're asking it to do. And that has become as cynical and as cyclical as planned obsolescence is, I guess, sort of where we are.
Well, you think of it this way: refrigerators and washing machines and dryers, and you know, the sort of everyday North American conveniences that we've had for, well, since the pre-boomer days, is basically a 40, 50 years ago, the device that was being made in the factory was being made using mechanical means. There was really no electronics.
And they were made like in North America.
Yeah, most likely. But then when you have like 1995-ish or so, or no, what is the cutoff? 1992, I think, was when the introduction of computer technology into car engines was really sort of beginning. And, now, 30 years later, we are seeing the electronics age try to do what the mechanical device did before that without any real problems. And again, as you said, lasted forever until those mechanical parts wore out. But now I had a dryer that I bought, I think, in 2018, and the electronics failed for whatever reason. And so I had to Frankenstein some together to make it work. But ultimately, if that was just a mechanical dial that did the job, I would still have a perfectly fine, not trying to deal with eBay and all kinds of stuff of trying to find things. And it looks like we've lost a viewer to a film, guys. It's terrible. Pandemic Playhouse, it takes over. So I don't know. I guess, maybe there's another 20, 30 years that need to pass where electronics and things like that are able to be as redundant and able to survive longer than a mechanical part. I don't know. Maybe. I mean, we're always gonna have mechanical stuff, but then of course, I think by that time we'll just be able to beam into our clothing.
No wonder the circuit failed.
It's made from Japan. But anyway, so I mean, overall, I think that there's definitely as Sean was saying earlier about how the generations tend to always poo-poo the previous ones. My thinking is, did we have generational gaps like we do now, or not gaps, discussions 150 years ago?
No. There was no such thing.
For example, or even prior to that, like, did people discuss the generations like they do now? I somehow don't, not from the same perspective, I would think. But Locke, you are more of the historian of those three. What is your thought on that?
Sorry, a historian of which?
Say 200 years ago, did the different generations that were growing up together or aging together bitch and moan as much as we do about, Gen X is awesome and Gen Y and Gen Z or whatever?
Sometimes, yeah, like your roaring boys of the, like the sort of this early 1700s, right? Like 1714 and all of that. Those guys were way rougher and cruder in most respects than, say, you're like the guys that came up in like Hogarth and all of them. They were sort of a little bit more sophisticated. Like they had pretensions to being intellectual, whereas in the 1714, 1715 sort of period where guys were sort of coming of age, it was it was pretty brutal. And then you take that and compare that with sort of 50 years later, sort of your sort of 1770s sort of chap. Fancy hair, frilly bows on fucking everything. Yeah, these things. I think I wouldn't say that they're cyclical, because that's not the case. It's not like there's a predictable cycle, but
right.
you can only the pants can only get so wide before they have to get thin again. Until they can only get so thin until there's no option but to do wide pants because people get bored is sort of, and so there is this sort of through history this generational flow of attention span where fashions change, partly because otherwise it would be dreadfully dull, but also there's always an aspect of whatever my parents did, I'm going to do the fucking opposite. God damn it. Yeah. Right? Which is why you get hippies calling, their parents fascists. The generation that actually, fought the fascists, fought right and won. Like it's pretty fucking rude if you think about it. That generation now, their big moment was the civil rights movement in the States, and like treat people racially equally. Well, fuck yeah. I mean, the boomers, they're as far as the millennials are concerned, they're the most racist fucks on the planet, aren't they? How dare they, right?
That's true. That's what I keep hearing.
So I mean, it's yeah. I mean, so that kind of thing, I think, is sort of part of the generational picture all the time, and you do see it in the relatively distant past. Yeah, I mean, you can kind of tease it out, even in Roman sources, I think. Certainly, by the time you get to the Renaissance, it's plain to see.
I'm gonna have to find a list of all the generations for the past however long.
Yeah. I don't think anybody's got records that good. Is the simple fact of the matter.
No, I know there are, but I'd be curious. I'm very curious.
The most peculiar thing about the situation of history is that when you and I met back in elementary school, the world we lived in then, the most that we could learn about the world was probably from books. Still, even then, that was, like there wasn't. Okay, sure, there were movies and museums, but in terms of what we had access to, probably books was pretty sophisticated. And here we are now, like we bridged that time all the way to where we are today, where we have this churn of information, which is increasingly crap and increasingly derivative of other crap information. Like it's a wild ride, isn't it?
It is. It very much is.
Well, I was just talking with a coworker of mine who is a millennial, and she told me that she found out through friends that apparently if you wear ankle socks, you are considered to be old now. Whereas like a year ago, ankle socks were, if you wore ankle socks, you were hit.
Oh, God.
Oh, my God. I still automatically get aroused whenever I see ankle boots. You remember the 80s ankle boots? Oh my God.
Yeah.
Chick that had ankle boots, I was like, oh my God, she's got ankle boots. She's like, that's like a thing, right? Like if she has ankle boots, it means she maybe fucking loves me and wants to get it on with me right now because she's got ankle boots. Oh my God, look at those ankle boots. My brain just melted whenever I saw ankle boots.
On that note, I'm going to melt right now, apparently. But we've been going for a while. Thank you so much for watching. We've had a bunch of people online today chatting with us. It's really what we want because we do it for fun. And as always, We'll be back next time when we have beer, and you'll actually be able to see myself and Alan again, because apparently it just got really dark here. Bye, everybody.